Are California lawmakers trying to criminalize professional or citizen journalists? The short answer is no, but a proposal at the state capitol has raised some freedom of speech concerns. This week, there was outrage online about a proposal that some Republicans claim is meant to silence citizen investigative reporters like YouTuber Nick Shirley. But the lawmaker who wrote the bill, Assemblymember Mia Bonta, says it's actually about protecting people who provide services to immigrants, a group of people she says are vulnerable right now. I sat down with both sides of the contentious proposal.
Can we call the roll?
California lawmakers this week moving forward with the measure that attempts to protect people who work for immigration-related organizations from threats and harassment.
In the summer, around the time of the mass immigration raids that were happening in LA, we started to get feedback from a lot of providers that they were under attack.
Democratic Assemblymember Mia Bonta wrote the proposal known as AB 2624. Bonta's proposal does two things. First, it allows people who work or volunteer for organizations that provide services to immigrants to be added to the state's Safe at Home program. That program conceals the home address of people with documented threats against their personal safety. It also prohibits people from posting the personal information or images of those providers. The poster could face criminal charges or a lawsuit and new fines. These are protections the state already gives to providers of abortion and gender-affirming care. Assemblymember Bonta is adamant this is not meant to block any journalist from doing their job.
My bill in no way would stop any organization from being investigated, and certainly doesn't stop any journalist from engaging in the very important work that journalists do to uncover truth.
The bill is sponsored by CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, which has received $14.3 million in California taxpayer funds since 2020. Conservatives criticize the group for using the funds to organize immigration protests in LA that turned violent. Republicans say the ban on posting images or video could be an affront to free speech and could stop independent journalists from investigating organizations like it.
I don't think that we should be infringing upon people's First Amendment rights.
Republican Assemblyman Carl DeMaio gave the bill the name the Stop Nick Shirley Act after the YouTuber who exposed fraud at Somali leering centers in Minnesota.
We should not be discouraging citizen journalists. We should not be preventing transparency from organizations that receive taxpayer money. If they have nothing to hide, why are they asking that these videos not be posted?
But do you truly think that Assemblymember Mia Bonta's intention with this bill was to potentially censor or suppress citizen journalism as opposed to that maybe being an unintended consequence of how she wrote this bill?
No, she's denying it, but she knows exactly what she's doing. Appreciate you coming to Sacramento.
Last week, DeMaio got Nick Shirley to the state capitol, and the attention on the bill exploded. Based on information from Republicans, Nick Shirley tried to ask Democrats about the bill.
It's insane. I've never seen anything like this ever.
What was your reaction when you saw that, like, Nick Shirley showed up to the Capitol and all this information was going around online?
My first reaction was, who's Nick Shirley? My apologies, I don't live in social media and probably don't live in the same spaces in social media where people who would know about Nick Shirley know about Nick Shirley. So the first was, who's Nick Shirley? Second reaction was just really sadness, to be honest with you. For him to have shown up, it means that we would have had to have a complete bastardization of our legislative process, and we would have had to have somebody completely misinform the public, and quite frankly, Nick Shirley, likely, about what the intention of the bill was, which has nothing to do at all with trying to impede everyday individuals or journalists for sure from being able to investigate.
First Amendment group FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, said this week the way the bill is written right now threatens free speech. While mainstream media is protected, the group says it's not clear how it could impact non-traditional journalists, and the measure could censor newsworthy content. Bonta says the bill is a work in progress with a long way to go at the Capitol.
At the end of the day, I am not trying to define who a citizen journalist is. I'm not trying to have anything to do with that, quite honestly. I want to be about protecting immigrant service providers with this piece of legislation. And And I think that's what it does.
We reached out to Nick Shirley for an interview. We did not hear back. My full conversations with Assembly members Democrat Mia Bonta and Republican Carl DeMaio are available right now on CalPolitics360.com.